Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a frankly fascinating hypothesis put forward by independent researcher René Lüth regarding Leonardo da Vinci's absolute masterpiece, The Last Supper. What we are going to look at here is a proposed, entirely testable, mechanical geometric decryption of this famous fresco.
Okay, let's ground ourselves right away with the crucial thoughts. The claim we're exploring today is a geometric blueprint, not some definitive, mystical conclusion. As Lüth himself states, this is an open invitation to measure, test, and potentially prove the whole thing wrong. So we're not dealing with wild, subjective interpretations here, but rather a rigid, mechanical framework.
To really understand how this proposed cipher systematically works, we're going to follow a precise 5-step roadmap. First step, the idea of a hidden geometric language. Second, point 0, the physical anchor. Third, the cryptographic mechanical bridge. Fourth, decoding the inner monologue. And finally, the path to falsification. All right, let's jump right into part 1, a hidden geometric language. Think about the last time you looked at this masterpiece. For centuries, we've all admired its visual drama, the disciples' reactions, the exquisite use of light, the theological narrative playing out on the wall. But the Fontana-Lüth hypothesis suggests that underneath all of this visible grammar, the painting's underlying structure is actually acting as a sequence of invisible angles. The claim is wild, but surprisingly simple. The geometry itself carries hidden data resolving into short Latin words that echo the very story the painting is telling. Which brings us to part 2, point 0, the physical anchor. Now, any valid scientific measurement needs an absolute, non-negotiable starting point, right? And here it is. Leonardo da Vinci literally drove a physical nail right into the masonry at Christ's right temple to stretch out strings for his perspective lines. He essentially hard-coded his vanishing point into the physical wall. And this isn't just a theory, it's a documented physical fact from the extensive restoration completed in 1999.
So why does this matter? Well, it's absolutely crucial because it means we don't arbitrarily choose where to start measuring. If we were just guessing where to place our protractor, the data would literally be meaningless. But the physical wall hands us point 0 as a hard, undeniable origin point for every single vector in this hypothesis.
Moving on to part 3, the cryptographic mechanical bridge. With our anchor securely established, we logically have to ask, how on earth can simple angles actually hold readable text? The answer seems to lie in bridging Renaissance cryptography with geometry. Specifically, we're looking at cipher disks described by the engineer Giovanni Fontana, who was a contemporary of the early Voynich manuscript. In Fontana's cryptographic systems, information is encoded purely by position within rotating sectors of exactly 22.5 degrees. This means the angle itself is the carrier of the data, rather than the visible symbol. To extract this data from the painting, the Fontana-Lüth method requires a strict, unvarying 4-step mechanism. Step 1, you measure the vector angle originating from our undeniable point 0. Step 2, you place that specific angle into one of those 22.5-degree Fontana sectors. Step 3, you translate that sector using Cappelli's Lexicon, which is the standard reference for medieval scribal shorthand. And finally, step 4, you output the resulting sign in mirror direction. And of course, that aligns perfectly with Leonardo's famous habit of writing in mirror script.
Okay, let's get to the really fun part. Part 4, decoding the inner monologue.
Let's apply this mechanical engine to some specific examples and see what this encoded language supposedly says. If you run primary compositional vectors out from our point 0 to key figures in the fresco, the hypothesis claims you begin to extract a highly specific sequence of signs. Each radiating angle represents a raw data point just waiting to be run through that Fontana disk. When we strictly follow these rules, a really fascinating decryption matrix emerges. Take the central vertical line rising at exactly 90 degrees. Placed into the Fontana disk and translated through the Cappelli lexicon, it resolves to the sign for per, or pro, which is interpreted here as the divine will setting the entire scene in motion. Shift that 165 degrees toward the architecture, and it translates to kalendos, marking the specific moment of this night. But perhaps the most striking example in this entire matrix is the 205-degree line, which points directly to Judas's shoulder. According to the hypothesis, this specific geometric vector translates precisely to the Latin abbreviation for nomen, meaning the name. So think about that. Without a single visible brushstroke spelling it out, the hidden geometry is effectively labeling the traitor. The physical perpetrator in the scene is intersected exactly by the mathematical vector for the name. It's kind of mind-blowing. Furthermore, the sequence ultimately closes right back where it began. A 330-degree line drawn toward Philip resolves perfectly to the word Christus, bringing the encoded message back to the center of the picture. So you have one angle, one sign, one word.
All of this culminates in what's called the two planes concept. The hypothesis proposes that Da Vinci created a truly multidimensional canvas. Plane 1 is the visible grammar. The biblical drama, the emotion, the brilliant perspective. But plane 2 is the code, an invisible vector grid completely free of grammar, built purely on Latin abbreviations. So while the visible picture tells the story we all know and love, the hidden geometric code acts as a silent, completely independent inner monologue.
Which leads us to our final step, part 5, the path to falsification. Because remember, to separate a real signal from just a really beautiful coincidence, this entire framework absolutely has to survive rigorous scientific testing. The researcher has laid out an open invitation requiring 4 strict steps. Most importantly, we need a precision 3D laser scan of the original Milan fresco to definitively verify these angles in actual physical space. From there, experts need to conduct paleographic validation, statistical analysis, and historical contextualization in a blind test. The origin point, the angle rules, and the sign mapping, they all must be fixed in place and tested. Ultimately, the data is completely open and the tools are ready, leaving us to wonder, will independent 3D scans and statistical tests open up a whole new chapter in Renaissance research, revealing Da Vinci's wall as a literal 3-dimensional storage medium? Or will science properly falsify a beautifully intricate coincidence? The door is open, and it's up to the scientific community to walk through it.